In the year I was so poor I had to eat bran and gruel, 2 high-ranking figures from the capital came to the orphanage. After finding the general's family's lost daughter, they waved their hands and donated 100 taels of gold, and also gave each child some pastries. When I reached out to accept it, bullet comments rolled across my eyes. Little sister, quickly take out your pendant. They're here looking for you. Once you expose that fake daughter-in-law who tried to usurp the role, you'll have a home again. They say the general is my elder brother, and the chancellor is my fiancé, but I only gnawed at pastries, burying my head even lower, because I know the 2 people in front of me are here for the fake heiress. No matter whether I take the jade pendant or not, they wouldn't even glance at me. Staring at the rapidly scrolling barrage of messages before me, I remained silent. I only used my purple frozen hands to catch the pastries. But the moment my fingertips grasped the edge of the greaseproof paper, the chancellor in his brocaded robe across from me suddenly stopped. When his gaze fell upon the red, swollen, cracked frostbite on my hand, his pupils contracted slightly, and a flicker of emotion spread across the depths of his eyes. My thin lips trembled slightly as if I wanted to say something, but I ultimately didn't open my mouth. The man beside me, seeing this, immediately shoved the pastry into my palm. His voice cold as frozen ice. His eyes didn't even glance at me once. Next one, staring at the gentle pastries in my palm, my eyes suddenly stung with sudden pain. I should have known all along that they wouldn't recognize me, but when the reality was right in front of me, my heart felt as cold as if it had been submerged in ice water, making my whole body tremble. And when they saw us standing face to face, the chat bubbles went wild. The rolling motion even more concealed the face of the person in front of me, but I didn't listen to the chat comments to expose Lila Gu, only bit down hard on the pastry and buried my head even lower, just when the strands of hair in front of my forehead covered the sweet red bin paste choked me and made my throat tighten. Little one, you should call for help. That's your older brother. The other one is your future husband. Hurry up and expose Lila Gu as this fake heiress. Otherwise, by the time the chancellor marries her in a month, it'll be too late. They kept urging me to stop, but I secretly clenched the jade pendant at my heart and ignored them. The only thing that made me feel sad was the icy sensation spreading from my fingertips throughout my entire body. The barrage of comments didn't know that I had been reborn, and that I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. From the moment I saw my older brother and Owen Chen just now, I realized that they had also been reborn. The fact that their eyes had never once looked in my direction made it even clearer to me. Even if they knew that Lila Gu was a fake, they would also choose to go along with the mistake. After all, in their previous life, they were all considering attending to Lila. They hated me to the core, even sighed before my death. If they could live another life, they definitely would never have brought me back. The days of being despised and living in solitude in my past life, I don't want to experience again. So, I don't want to expose Lila Gu, and I don't want to have any more connection with them. As the line of people who had finished distributing pastries turned to leave, I suppressed the dull ache in my chest and clenched the oil paper ready to return to work in the fields. But the moment I stood up, the red string around my neck that held the jade pendant suddenly snapped. The jade pendant fell onto the blue stone tiles, and the crisp sound echoed with the cold male voice. That was a personal jade pendant left by my mother to my younger sister. My whole body stiffened, my blood seeming to freeze instantly in my veins, making my breathing catch slightly. When I slowly raised my head, I directly met Jude Gu's suddenly darkened eyes. He had already stepped forward with long strides and bent down to pick up the jade pendant. When the fleshy part of his finger rubbed against the character GU engraved on it, his gaze grew slightly warm. Suddenly, I remembered the first time in my previous life when my elder brother knelt down in front of me, looking at me with eyes so gentle and indulgent. He saw the jade pendant. He's finally going to recognize me as family. Little sister's suffering has finally come to an end. Jude, quickly take your little sister away. Don't let that fake rich girl overstep her bounds. Hearing this, I couldn't help but clench the hem of my dress. A mixture of bitterness and faint hope surged up within me. Suddenly, I thought, perhaps my elder brother's words in his past life "I shouldn't have brought you back" were just words spoken in anger. This time, will he still take me home? But as soon as this hope surfaced, it was shattered. When I raised my eyes and saw Lila Gu's pale face beside me, Ju clenched the jade pendant and slapped me hard across the face. When half his face went numb to the point of losing sensation, his voice was like ice. Would you dare steal what belongs to my younger sister? If I hadn't happened to catch you today, would you have treated this jade pendant as your own possession and kept pursuing me? His gaze was sharp as a blade, and he turned to toss the jade pendant to Lila Gu, his eyes filled with gentle indulgence. Lila, put the jade pendant away safely, so it won't be stolen again by people with impure intentions. The sudden shift from harshness to gentleness pierced my heart like an ice spike. The bullet comments exploded. Jude, is he crazy? That's your own sister. You fool. You'll regret this sooner or later. Mingming, I don't want to cry, but looking at their comfort, tears uncontrollably rolled down. When the blood droplets from my mouth hit the frostbite on my palm, the sharp pain spread along my nerves, making my fingertips tremble. They said Jude was foolish, that he couldn't recognize his own sister, that he would eventually regret it, but only I know that he wasn't foolish, that he knew everything, and that he would never regret it, because all the events of my past life surged before my eyes. When Ju Jiu and Owen Shun came, I didn't know I was the person they were looking for. Only in the courtyard did all the eligible girls have red eyes and secretly fantasize, hoping they themselves were the one being found back, after all. In this orphanage for the isolated and destitute, everyone's hope was to have a home, but in the end, they finally brought her most favored Lila Gu to stand before them. The moment she threw herself into her older brother's arms with her fair and clean face, my envious eyes reddened, even more so, when the barrage of comments scrolled past, calling me the true young lady of the general's mansion. I gathered my courage and rushed forward. I pulled out the jade pendant and exposed her. After confirming that the jade pendant was real, my elder brother wiped the dirt from my face with a clean handkerchief. Coldly pushing away Lila Gu who wanted to defend herself, he held me close to his chest. His eyes filled with, the phrase "senior brother will take you home" made me burst into tears. In the following 3 years, I indeed had a home, just as the comments said. My elder brother, as a general, was cold and resolute from childhood, yet he was tender only with me. He remembered that I loved Osmanthus cake, and would stand up for me when I was wronged, and Owen Shun, my fiancé, was even more gentle and considerate. On our wedding day, he held my hand as he vowed before our ancestors' tablets that he would never take a concubine in this life. This happiness, however, shattered quickly. On the day of the difficult childbirth, Owen Shun brought back Lila Gu. When he knelt by my bedside, he said he wanted to take Lila Gu as his concubine. Upon hearing this, my brother immediately stabbed him with his sword, grabbed Lila Gu, and was about to send her to a manor thousands of miles away, ensuring she would never disturb my life again. But half a month later, Lila Gu returned. Her elder brother had also changed. He said that Lila Gu was pitiful and wanted to adopt her as his adoptive sister, even asking me to agree to Owen Shun marrying her as his secondary wife. Lila Gu stood behind him, her eyes full of provocation. Looking at these two people who once protected me like treasures, I could only feel absurd and heartbroken. So, I supported my weak body and slapped Lila Gu hard across the face. After that, when I destroyed the reunion banquet they held for Lila Gu, I also destroyed the dowry Owen Shun had prepared for her, because of the heartbreak. Lila Gu stayed indoors and wouldn't come out. It was discovered the next day that she had died from poisoning. All the evidence pointed to me, and the letter she left behind, a farewell letter, further led Ju Gu and Owen Shun to believe that I was heartless and could not tolerate Lila Gu. They didn't do anything to me, they just stopped looking at me altogether. After that, Owen shaved his head and entered the monastery outside the city. My elder brother requested to be stationed on the frontier and refused to see me again. For the remaining 30 years, I raised the children alone, watching my hair turn from black to white. On my deathbed, they finally came back to look at me, but in my delirium, I clearly heard my eldest brother's voice filled with endless regret. If only we had let things go as they were and not brought you back. Owen Chen remained silent, but that heavy sigh cut into me like a knife, giving me a brutal blow. That day, I died filled with hatred, but I was reborn on the day they came to the orphanage to pick people up. I knew they would choose Lila Gu. I clenched the jade pendant, wanting only to wait quietly until next month when I would come of age and leave this place. From then on, I would find some small town where no one knew me and live alone. This time, I didn't want to expose Lila Gu anymore. I didn't want to need that home that had caused me pain for half my life. But I never in a million years expected that it would be because of the red cord breaking. My elder brother, right in front of everyone, took away the jade pendant my mother left behind. Worse still, he gave me such a resounding slap. The cold wind of the 12th lunar month cut like a knife, making my cheek sting painfully. As the story shifted, the Danmaku began to disperse. When the blood droplet on my lips hit the grey stone slab, that dark red stain spread in the snow. It was exactly like it was when I died with hatred in my heart in my past life. The tear that flowed from the corner of my eye, when my chest hurt so badly it went numb. Auntie Director grabbed my hair with her rough hands. Shameless bastard, how dare you argue after stealing Miss Lila's jade pendant? Today, I'm going to break your legs and throw you to the backyard to chop wood. The palm wind fell again, and I trembled all over from the pain, but she still obediently left with her. But Lila Gu suddenly stepped forward. She was draped in an exquisite fox fur cloak, her eyes filled with smug satisfaction. Miss, please don't be angry. Mia's sister just lost her mind for a moment and wanted to live a good life. Anyway, the jade pendant is back, so please don't beat her anymore. As she said this, she reached out and brushed over my frost-bitten, purple hand, her eyes full of pity. In the orphanage, Mia's sister always shared half of her steamed bun with me. I remember her kindness, so I also want her to live well. She looked at me and smiled, then turned her gaze toward the two men beside the carriage. Her voice was as soft as cotton. Brother, Master Shen, may I take my sister with me? After all, even serving as a maid in the general's mansion would be better than suffering from cold and hunger here. Hearing this, Jude instinctively frowned, looking at Lila's pleading eyes. His tone finally softened a bit. Owen Shun was even more helpless. Nodding his head, how could we not agree? Lila's face lit up with joy, but I suddenly looked up, a broken sound squeezed from my throat. I didn't want to leave with them. But my collar was grabbed in the next moment. My elder brother's fingers were also pressed against the acupoint on my neck. When numbness spread throughout my body, I could no longer emit a single sound. If it weren't for Lila's kindness, you would have already been flogged to death. Don't throw away a favor. After coldly tossing me to the guards, the man turned and walked toward Lila. And when I was forced to be shoved into the carriage, at the moment the carriage curtain fell, I saw my eldest brother gently helping Lila Gu off the carriage. The entire journey, the carriage jolted violently. With my throat left dry and hoarse from being silenced, I helplessly watched Lila Gu and my eldest brother laughing and chatting, my heart growing cold. I know Lila Gu bringing me back had nothing to do with pitying me, and indeed, from the moment she entered the mansion, her harassment never ceased. In just half a month, she deliberately spilled scalding hot tea countless times, watching as my hands blistered from the burns. Worse still, she made sure I knelt in the snow until dawn. My elder brother and Owen Shinzi always turned a blind eye. During this period of time, Owen Shin gave gifts to Lila Gu. That entire box of South China Sea pearls was 3 times more valuable than the dowry he had offered when he proposed to me in his previous life. I watched as Owen Shin personally pinned the jade hairpin in Lila Gu's hair, his eyes filled with tenderness like someone drowning, but when he turned and saw me sweeping the corridor, he gave me not even a glance. The elder brother treasured Lila Gu like his own eyes. He personally taught her to sword fight for self-defense, even specially ordered the creation of a silver warming stove to prevent her from getting cold. On her birthday, the two of them held a grand banquet in the mansion, inviting all the nobles and dignitaries of the capital. The elder brother announced in public, "Lila Gu is the long-lost eldest miss of the general's mansion, the person that Ju Gu is willing to risk his life to protect. But she forgot, I am his real younger sister, now." At the banquet, glasses clinked and guests' congratulations rose one after another, and I was dragged by Lila's maid to kneel on the stone steps outside the banquet hall, serving as a human pillar. The servant in brocade boots stepped on my back as he went up and down the stairs, and the wounds from Lila Gu's whiplashes on my back felt as if they were being torn apart. I whited out and bit my teeth so hard they would not come out. But because the mute point that my elder brother had sealed meant I couldn't even let out a muffled groan, when tears filled my eyes, I didn't want to look at their warmth and happiness. But in my previous life, the promise my elder brother made at the banquet, holding my hand and saying he would protect me for life, and Owen Shin's vow kept flashing before my eyes. Here is the translation. Now what they did to me, all of it has been given to Lila Gu. When the cold wind whips snow foam onto my eyelashes, I suddenly laughed. Snow water mixed with tears slid into my mouth, salty and cold. I myself, this really isn't anything to be sad about, but in the chest, it still felt frozen. A dull ache was spreading. I thought I would cry again like a coward, just like every time I saw them ignore me for Lila. But right now I discovered that my eyes were so dry they couldn't shed a single tear, and once all the guests had entered the estate, I finally could rise to my feet. When the cold wind whistled snow into my collar, I supported myself with my frozen, stiff knees, slowly getting up from the icy stone steps. The music and laughter in the banquet hall felt like needles dipped in ice, pricking people's ears painfully. I tried to keep my eyes straight ahead. The chill that had built up when I was used as a human pillar now penetrated deep into my bones. As the pain spread, I dragged my leaden legs toward the back courtyard kitchen. It was exactly mealtime now, but when I pushed open the door, I saw the stove was cold and the wooden bucket for rice was completely empty. I told you so long ago, today's meal is prepared for the guests attending the banquet. There's no portion for you at all. Why are you still here? Old Zhong, who was in charge of tending the fire, looked at me with a sidelong glance, her mouth curled in mockery, but the rice she was holding in her hands stabbed my lower abdomen, causing me to cramp. I wanted to argue, but another maid came forward with a half-full chamber pot, covering her nose. When the pungent, foul smell hit me, I instinctively stepped back, but was firmly held down by a servant's shoulders. The warm filth poured down, and my vision immediately blurred. She really thought that the young lady bringing her back was going to make sure she had enough to eat and wear, but everyone knows the young lady isn't kind-hearted. She just wants to make her life harder, and besides, the young lady ordered that as long as she's kept half-dead every day, the reward won't be lacking. The servants burst into unrestrained laughter. In no time at all, their laughter came to a sudden halt, because, elder brother and Owen Shun had appeared. That jet black and moon-white brocade robe was especially eye-catching in the dim kitchen. At this moment, Jude's face was ashen with rage, after scanning my disheveled appearance. He coldly turned his gaze toward the maid who had been vomiting on me. Drag her away and beat her to death. In an instant, the maid fell to her knees in terror. Lila arrived unexpectedly, her eyes red from crying, grasping at the man's sleeve. "Brother, it's my fault, I didn't manage my servants properly. Don't blame them." When she turned to look at me, her eyes were filled with guilt, yet her gaze betrayed an unmistakable pride. "Mia sister, I'm sorry. It's all my fault for not giving proper instructions in advance, making you suffer." Upon hearing this, both men's gazes lingered on me for a moment before they ultimately turned away. "Since Lila has interceded for you, General, I shall spare you this time." Seeing this, Lila turned her tears to a smile, while the maid stood up proudly to apologize, though not sincerely. "Sorry, Mia, I'll take you to wash up right away." When forcibly turned around, I couldn't help but look back. But I saw that my brother had brushed the snow froth from Lila Gu's skirt, and Owen Shun quickly offered her a warming pot. In an instant, I withdrew my gaze and suppressed the trembling all over my body. I understood they knew Lila Gu's intentions, they just didn't care about me. But this is fine too. I, too, no longer care about it. After washing up, I finally managed to take a brief rest on the straw pile in the woodshed. But as soon as I closed my eyes, I heard the maid's urgent calls from outside the door. "Are you still standing there after washing up? Miss wants you to go to the front courtyard to serve tea to the distinguished guests." When I suddenly opened my eyes, I remembered that in my previous life, Princeton had declared in front of everyone that he fell madly in love with me at first sight, and later wanted to take me away from the General's mansion many times, thinking this might be my chance to escape from the General's mansion. My heart was pounding with excitement. I want to leave, even if it means being seduced by Israel. When I clenched my hand around the teapot, I took a deep breath and walked step by step toward the bustling banquet hall. As my gaze swept across the feast, I quickly locked onto the inn sitting in the corner. The man was wearing a royal blue brocade robe, nonchalantly playing with his wine glass. I held the teapot, my fingertips trembling slightly from nervousness, but the next moment, I walked straight toward him, sensing something. The man suddenly grabbed my wrist when I was about to place the tea in front of him. "You girl, you're quite pretty. How about following this county prince?" The moment those words were spoken, the hall fell into instant silence. When everyone's gazes turned toward him, Owen's fingers that were clutching the wine glass suddenly tightened. The elder brother's face changed dramatically. "No way," but I didn't look at them. Only when raising his eyes to meet the gaze did he muster all his strength and clearly responded with a good. The moment the word good faded into sound, the air in the banquet hall seemed to freeze. Gu, dark blue brocade robe swept across the desk in front of me, the clinking of cups and bowls producing a crisp sound when his hand grasped my wrist. The man's strength was so great it felt like he would crush my bones. Those usually icy eyes were now blazing with fury. "How could you be so despicable?" The roar echoed in my ears, making me wince in pain. When he met Jude Gu's gaze, the disappointment and frustration in his eyes were almost overflowing. "Do you know who An is? Who in the capital doesn't know he's a womanizer? A playboy who can't keep any woman for more than 7 days, even if he were to take a sudden fancy to you. At most he would only give you the position of concubine. Do you really want to degrade yourself so far as to follow him?" He stared at me intently, as if I dared to agree. I would be nothing but self-abased and despicable, utterly unforgivable. But for me, being a concubine would be better than suffering humiliation here. And besides, in the General's mansion, I was a servant girl who could be beaten and abused, a lowly wretch doused with filthy water. a pitiful creature who couldn't even get a full meal. To become a concubine to a marquis and have warm clothes and full meals would be the best outcome possible. So, I'm willing. I wanted to pull away from his hand, but Owen, who had been silent this whole time, could no longer hold back. Mia, look. He stared at me, his eyes red-rimmed, his chest beneath the moon-white robe rose and fell violently. Jude was even more furious, his temple veins throbbing with anger. For a moment, he wanted to tell me that I was actually the true eldest miss of the general's household, and scold me for treating myself so poorly. But just then, a voice filled with tears interrupted everything. Brother, Lila ran down from the main seat and tugged at his sleeve. Tears fell like beads of pearls sliding down a broken string. Today is my identification banquet. Can't you please not ruin everyone's mood over such a small matter? If Sister Mia has made her decision, then let her be. She said this while still raising her eyes to look at Owen Shin, her eyes filled with grievance. Suddenly, the two men came to their senses. Jude looked at Lila Gu's reddened eyes, his hand that had been tightly gripping mine suddenly loosened, and the anger on his face was replaced by coldness. Owen Shin also composed himself, slowly sitting back in his original seat, but the fingers clutching the wine glass remained pale at this moment. They finally remembered that today's feast was meant to announce to everyone that Lila Gu is the young lady of the general's mansion, not to provoke anger at me, this maid. Thus, Jude Gu threw out a suit yourself and walked back to his seat with long strides. Theon was called a womanizer in public, yet he didn't seem to mind at all. When he reached out and pulled me into his embrace, he took out a Osmanthus cake from his sleeve pocket and shoved it unconditionally into my mouth. Look at how thin you've become, eat more good food. When the sweet fragrance spread across my taste buds, I finally realized that I had long been starving from the meager meals Lila Gu had deliberately withheld. In my previous life, I most hated men who were promiscuous, but right now, looking at the smiling eyebrows and eyes of Prince An, his eye sockets were filled with tears. In a daze, I remembered that in my previous life, only after death did I learn that Prince An had remained unmarried for my sake all his life. Even after my death, he had once knelt at the door of the general's mansion, begging Jude Gu to allow him to bury my remains. At the moment my throat tightened, I devoured the pastries greedily, tears mixing with the crumbs falling down. The banquet continued, and the guests quickly forgot about the earlier incident, their words filled with congratulations to Lila Gu. Only Jude Gu and Owen Shun, seated at the head table, kept glancing toward me. Finally, when the guests had all departed, I followed Prince An out through the great gate of the general's mansion. At the moment her fingertips could touch the car curtain, her wrist was suddenly grabbed from behind. When she turned back, two figures stood in the snow. Jude's dark-colored cloak was covered in snow, and the snowflakes at his temples had melted into droplets due to his anxiety. Owen Shun had also lost the composure he had at the banquet, his eyes swirling with complex and indistinguishable emotions. Without thinking, I glanced behind them, but I didn't see Lila Gu. I figured they must have left her behind at the estate so she wouldn't witness this scene and be saddened by it. At this moment, looking at their grave expressions, a mocking smile curled at the corner of my mouth. General, do you still want to stop me? I tried to pull my wrist free from Jude Gu's grip, but he suddenly tightened his hold, his knuckles turning white from the force. The bone-chilling pain that shot through my wrist made me unable to help but frown. My eyes stung with redness from both the accumulated grievances of recent days and the oppression of the moment. Are you really determined to make things difficult for me? A lowly maid. Jude's figure stiffened, and the grip on my wrist loosened slightly. You actually know, don't you? You're the one who's my real younger sister, right? He looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt that seemed about to overflow. Since that day when he saw the look in my eyes had lost the innocence of our first meeting in my past life, he guessed that I had been reborn. But in my previous life, Lila Gu died, becoming a thorn in the hearts of both him and Owen Shun. So in this life, when Lila Gu mistreated me endlessly, they chose to turn a blind eye. They wanted to give me a lesson, wanted me to remember the harm I had done to Lila Gu. But I never expected that I would rather become a concubine than stay at the general's mansion. Right now, he took a step forward, his voice carrying an indescribable hoarseness. Don't degrade yourself. In a few days, I will announce to the world that I recognize you as my. This time, both you and Lila are my younger sisters, and I will protect both of you. Owen Shun also stepped forward, his usually cold voice carrying a hint of unease that was barely noticeable. I can also take you as my secondary wife. They stood in the snow, their promises seeming like charity. They thought I would be over the moon, but now, I only find it ridiculous. Long ago, in their previous lives, they died with hatred for Lila Gu Ren Wo, and in this life, they watched with their own eyes as Lila Gu poured filthy water on me, made me into a human pillar, and even refused to give me a proper meal. I was pushed into the abyss by their own hands. These so-called goodness is something I no longer care about. Right now, I cast a cold gaze downward, my voice calm and devoid of any trace of emotion. Minister and general are joking. I am but a lowly servant who stole things and was kicked out of an orphanage. How could I deserve such kindness from the two of you? I deliberately emphasized the two characters to remind Owen that he was currently a minister. Also tell them, there was already an ocean of distance between us. Besides, I looked toward the NS direction, my tone carrying a touch of deliberate gentleness. I have admired the for a long time. To become his concubine is something I would do willingly and eagerly seek. Both of you should go back now, so as not to linger here too long and hurt Miss Lila. In an instant, Jude, Gu, and Owen Shun all froze in place. Their lips moved slightly, as if they wanted to say something more. A warm mew from Prince and reached their ears. I turned around immediately and walked quickly toward the hand he extended. The moment I was firmly grasped, the warmth of the man's palm dispelled the chill from my fingertips. It also dispelled the last trace of attachment I still held toward the past. I didn't look back at the two people behind me, only drawing the carriage curtain closed as I stepped onto the snow-covered carriage. Block those two figures frozen in the snow completely from the outside. The carriage rolled over the snow-covered ground, quickly leaving Jude Gu and Owen Shun's figures far behind. Seeing this, Jude Gu clenched his fists, his body rigid and straight beneath his dark cloak. Owen Shun instinctively took a step forward to chase after them, but was suddenly grabbed by the wrist. She doesn't appreciate it. Let her be. His voice was as cold as ice. Yet there was a trace of panic in his eyes that he himself hadn't noticed, but he still forced himself to stay calm. After all, this lifetime we're here to make up for Lila. Why let her throw us off course? Owen Chen's footsteps paused, but a bitter taste arose in his throat as he watched the carriage disappear in the direction it had gone. Yet when the moon-white robe was blanketed in snow, he ultimately withdrew his gaze. Jiu Xiong was right. She's gone, and that's for the best. Though he said as much, neither of the two turned around. The chest feels as if something is blocking it, until the carriage completely disappears at the end of the alley, becoming a small black dot. They step through the snow-covered ground, walking silently toward the general's residence. The silhouette in the snow is stretched unusually long. However, after the carriage moves away, the atmosphere becomes somewhat stiff. I huddled in the corner, my fingertips tightly clutching the hem of my garment, my palms sweating with nervousness. Princeton leaned against the soft cushions, watching me with keen interest. When a playful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, he suddenly patted his leg. Come sit here. My heart sank abruptly. Sure enough, the rumors were true. This Marquis was known for his womanizing, and he probably truly regarded me as nothing more than a toy to be played with at will. But then again, If he was willing to take me away from the general's mansion, I should be prepared to pay a price. Spending 7 days with him in exchange for my freedom was worth it. After all, without the identity of the general's mansion's eldest daughter, what reason did I have to expect him to treat me with genuine sincerity? So I took a deep breath and suppressed the bitterness in my heart. When I slowly moved over, I sat down stiffly on his lap, remembering those rumors about his indulgence in the carriage. I gritted my teeth and went to undo my clothing, but when my fingers touched the knot of the garment's strap, my wrist was seized. I stared blankly upward, only to see Prince's ears red with embarrassment. His usual smiling eyes were now filled with panic. He even stammered slightly when speaking. You can't do this. We have to wait until after our wedding to do such things. You want to marry me?" I opened my eyes wide in disbelief, almost thinking I had heard wrong. He nodded vigorously, his gaze exceptionally serious. Then, as if remembering something, he suddenly raised his hand to undo the brocade robe and stripped off the upper part of his clothing. Moonlight streamed in through the gaps in the carriage curtain, illuminating his robust waist and well-defined abdominal muscles, and on his arm, a bright red cinnabar mark was particularly eye-catching. My vision suddenly went black and my heart began to race wildly. Because the prince consort of the former princess had been secretly unfaithful, it had brought disgrace upon the royal family. The late emperor, furious, issued an edict that all members of the imperial clan, male or female, must have a cinnabar mark placed on their arms at birth to distinguish those of pure lineage. Prince Kuan had long been known for his dissolute lifestyle and reputation for being a womanizer. How could he possibly be pure? As if reading my thoughts, he seemed somewhat embarrassed, yet his voice remained deep and solemn. The crown princess's household once held overwhelming power. My uncle, while alive, always harbored resentment toward my mother's clan. If I hadn't pretended to be a dissolute and womanizing playboy, they would have regarded me as a thorn in their side, and my life would not have been safe. As he spoke, he raised his eyes to look at me, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I like you. From the moment I saw you at the banquet in my past life, I've liked you. Now that I'm like this, it's because I don't want you to misunderstand me, and more importantly, I don't want you to think that taking you with me was just a whim. Now that the new emperor has ascended the throne, as someone who supported the old emperor, I no longer need to pretend, and when I said I wanted to marry you, I was being absolutely sincere." Hearing the words previous life, my heart trembled. In my previous life, after death, my soul witnessed the scene of him never remarrying and kneeling before my remains, and this memory surged up like a tide of emotions. So, looking into his earnest eyes, I nodded slightly of my own accord. "But I want a pre-written divorce document. If someday he betrays me, I can still leave cleanly, without repeating the mistakes of my past life." Upon hearing this, Princeton laughed and ruffled my hair. "I will make you feel at peace. But I will never give you the chance to leave me." The words had barely left his mouth when he immediately picked up pen and paper, writing the divorce papers without hesitation and handing them to me. At the same time, the carriage arrived at the Princess Chang's residence, and the snow had also stopped. The silver light of the full moon shone upon the vermilion gates, dispelling the chill of winter. The moment I held the divorce papers in my hands, I understand. The pain and grievances that have entangled me for 2 lifetimes will finally come to an end, and I will welcome a true rebirth. Late at night, the general's residence was deathly quiet. Ju Jiyu and Owen Shen sat silently in the study, and the tea in front of them had already gone cold. Suddenly, the hidden guard who had been secretly investigating potential threats appeared in the room without a sound. He knelt on one knee, his voice cold and calm. "Subject has discovered that Lila Jiyu has been secretly colluding with the rebel Prince Duan's faction, and has been secretly investigating the confidential matters in the study of this household and the Chancellor's residence. And moreover, Lila Gu's identity is fake. She is not the young lady from the general's mansion who went missing years ago. The moment the air in the study froze, Jude Gu suddenly clenched the Celadon teacup in his hand tightly. When the cup walls emitted a faint cracking sound, his eyes were filled with shock and terror. His hands were trembling slightly as well. Owen Shen also stood up abruptly, his face grave as if covered in frost. They had long known that Lila Gu wasn't the genuine daughter of the general's mansion, but they couldn't accept that the kind and pitiful girl from their past life, who had made them feel guilty for a lifetime, would be a spy with ulterior motives. Jude Gu's Adam's apple bobbed as he spoke, his voice carrying suppressed anger. "Why didn't you report this earlier?" The shadow guard was startled for a moment, then lowered his head. "Subject only discovered this half an hour ago through thorough investigation." Upon hearing this, the two of them were suddenly stunned. Memories surged like tidal waves. They suddenly recalled that in their previous life, after bringing me back, Jude immediately assigned the only 2 secret guards given by His Majesty to guard me at all times. Since the secret guards had to stay by my side at all times to protect me completely, they had no time to investigate the backgrounds of the other people in the household. But in this life, they were so determined to make up for Lila Jude that they didn't assign the secret guards to me, who had been wronged. Therefore, the dark guards were able to focus on identifying potential threats and uncovered this hidden danger. They knew that the dark guards were always meticulous in their work, and the information they uncovered would never be false. But that lingering attachment to their past friendship made it hard for them to accept reality. So Jude waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "Investigate again, verify every detail thoroughly. There must be no room for error whatsoever." Owen Chen fell silent in agreement, his fingertips unconsciously rubbing against the edge of the table, his heart feeling as heavy as a boulder. After the shadow guard left, Lila Gu sent people to invite them to accompany her out of the mansion for some sightseeing. In the past, the two would have readily agreed without hesitation, but upon thinking of the news brought by the shadow guard, they declined. Getting the reply, a flicker of unwillingness flashed across Lila Gu's eyes, but it was quickly masked. After dismissing the accompanying maidservant with an excuse, she secretly slipped out of the general's mansion. She walked into a secluded restaurant, but didn't notice that a dark shadow followed her like a ghost. Overhearing every word of her conversation with the person inside the private room, in the thick of night, Lila Gu returned to the mansion with a smile, and almost simultaneously, the shadow guard also appeared in the study. This time, he did not recite aloud, but instead placed a stack of letters and confidential documents in front of the two men. "Master, the evidence is conclusive." Upon hearing this, Jude trembled as he picked up the confidential document, and his pupils contracted sharply at that moment. "Are you saying that my aunt already knows I've taken on a fake younger sister, and that she's even come all the way to the capital, and that Lila Gu was afraid of being exposed? So she personally proposed to Prince Duan that they first go to a temple for blessings, using the opportunity to administer the love poison and turn the rice into a completed meal, even specially arranging an assassination attempt against me so she could sacrifice herself to block the sword." The man's face was grim, his voice even hoarse and unpleasant to hear. How much he wished to hear that she didn't know. After hearing everything clearly, Owen clenched his fist tightly. Memories from his past life also surged to his mind. He remembered that the reason he insisted on marrying Lila Gu as his secondary wife was precisely because he had fallen victim to love poison in the temple and was nearly deceived. It was Lila Gu who timely appeared to take him away, and who sacrificed herself to cure him of the poison. Because of his guilt over ruining her purity, he favored her in everything. Even when his own wife wept from heartbreak, it moved him not in the slightest. And Ju Jiu also recalled the entanglements of his past life. He had originally intended to drive away Lila Gu, who tried to sabotage his sister's marriage, but due to her assassination attempt where Lila Gu blocked a sword strike for him, he felt deep remorse. Not only did they recognize her as a foster sister, but even when Mia was weak after childbirth, they forced Mia to graciously accept Lila Gu as a secondary wife, yet even with the evidence before them, they still clung to a sliver of resistance. Let's wait and see. However, the next morning, Lila Gu sent someone over. She said she had been feeling restless lately and wanted to invite the two of them to a temple in the suburbs for blessings. Meanwhile, the covert guards also brought news, informing them that there would be an assassination attempt targeting Jude Gu today in the suburbs. At this moment, Owen Shun and Jude Gu could no longer deceive themselves. The instant chill swept through his chest. Their hearts were as if soaked through with ice-cold water from the harsh winter. Even breathing carried a piercing pain. She actually is using us, Jude muttered to himself, his fingers nearly crushing the confidential document. Owen Chen stood aside, his face as pale as paper. The overlap between past life incidents and present evidence forced them to admit the truth. Their so-called guilt and attempts at redemption across 2 lifetimes had been a meticulously orchestrated deception from start to finish. Just as the two of them were lost in regret, a servant rushed over with a gold-embossed wedding invitation, his voice carrying a hint of panic. "General, Prime Minister, the Yuan has sent a note saying that there has found true love and will be holding a wedding banquet today. Please the two of you grace the occasion with your presence. Today." Jude's eyes suddenly shot up, his heart skipping a beat. The image of me leaving with the Yuan the day before flashed through his mind. When Owen suddenly snatched the wedding invitation from his hands, his fingers trembled as they unfolded the invitation, and he saw the bride's name clearly written in gold on the red background. Mia Gu. Slapped. The wedding invitation slipped from his hands. "No, Mia can't marry him." His voice was hoarse. And Jude Gu's